Welcome to the show, Philip Ittner, host of On the Edge every Sunday, and of course, who joins me on the Wednesday show and on the Saturday radio show for the second hour to talk about all things Ukraine and the ongoing war there and the response by the rest of the world to it and everything around it. And his show makes it very personal because he interviews people who are there and experiencing it and trying to help Ukraine make its way through this, the humanity of the people there. And so, welcome, Phil. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you.
And so, you often talk about the Lincoln quote
Yeah,
as,
yep.
yeah,
My North Star.
yeah,
Yeah,
and this,
absolutely.
and so maybe explain the Lincoln quote to everybody who may not have heard it before, and then we'll discuss a little bit about the sort of difference between the worldviews.
Yeah, well, it's relevant to what you were just talking with Tara about because it, the, the Lincoln quote that kind of parted the clouds for me when I was very conflicted about the
Hmm.
narrative that Moscow was putting out about America in particular and the West in general, of this kind of like, you're all hypocrites. You
Hmm.
all talk about like, the rights of man and the rule of law and all of these things, and yet you break them constantly. America, you are born on the back of slaves and on the back and
Right.
um, the theft of land by the native,
Hmm.
away from the Native Americans, uh, and pointing out the hypocrisies of our foreign policy and things like this. So it came to me at a very conflicted point when I was
Hmm.
arguing with myself because I was like, well, we do these things.
Hmm.
We do we do fall short of our ideals quite often. And I ran into this quote and I distinctly remember it. I was in the Baghdad bureau of CBS News, so it must have been 2003 to 2008, somewhere in there. And I put it at the end of every episode of
Hmm.
On the Edge for a reason. And the quote that cleared it up for me comes from a letter that Lincoln writes to a childhood friend. It's called the Speed Letter, and it's written in 1855 in the build up, in
Hmm.
the kind of build up to actually bleeding Kansas. It's not even really the Civil War, but everybody knows this is headed towards uh, conflict over the concept of slavery. Hell, we knew this at the creation of the country. Anyhow, so in the Speed Letter, he writes to his childhood friend who is a slave owner, because of course Lincoln was born in Kentucky.
Hmm.
Um, and in it, he writes, look, you guys have always been with us
Hmm.
from the creation of the nation. The guys who say, um, uh, you know, uh, independence and human rights and liberty, but what you mean is liberty for people who look like me or
Hmm.
who are like me. And I disagree with that. And so to get to specifically, and I always paraphrase it because I get it wrong, even after all these years, is we began this. The quote is roughly, "We began this nation with the idea that all men are created equal. We are now at a place in our history where we consider all men are created equal, except for Negroes, foreigners, Catholics,
Hmm.
and I think he has another category in there." He said, if the people who hold that mentality ever actually take command of this project called America, I would rather immigrate to a country like Russia, where at least they don't pretend to have,
Right.
that they govern without the base alloy of these, these hypocrisies, or these lies. And so, what he is in essence saying is that at least we tried.
Yeah.
At least we want to be better. The idea, we fall short of it all the time. We have elements within our nation who actually only play lip service to it, but who really want to be white Christian nationalists, supremacists
Hmm.
above other elements of the nation, and that to me is a lie. I'd rather just go to Russia and forget about any
Yeah.
pretext of
For the
being
record, by the
better.
way, too,
And that's
for
1855, by the way.
right and
1855, and he's talking about Russia.
right, and also in 18, like Russia did not. Hold on one second. Let's see there. Okay, I will ask about that. And Jen, thank you so much for the gifted memberships. Oh my God. So he said, I think it was just Negroes, foreigners, and Catholics were the three groups that
Yeah, I think
he
it's
pointed
such
out,
it's
because it was a
just the
letter
three.
about
Sometimes, yeah,
the Know Nothing Party, but which was
yeah,
rising and whatever, which is a great name
which
for
is
the modern
MAGA.
Republican Party. Um,
It's
but
just MAGA or America Firsters or the
yes,
Confederacy. It's the same
yeah,
thing. They've always been with us.
anti-immigrant, anti-Catholic, isolationists of the time. And one of
Yeah.
the people need to know also that Russia had serfdom slavery until a year after we ended slavery here. So in
No, you're
1866,
no,
they
no.
yeah, or
Oh,
sorry,
they did it before. They did it. They were 63 and we were 66. They will crow about it. Trust me, they crow
yeah.
about it
Well,
all the time.
maybe it's their
We
Juneteenth
got rid
moment,
of our slaves. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, no. What it is them just trying to prove that they're better than
right? By moving the date,
America by saying we got rid of our serfs before you got rid of your slaves. Yeah, but the rest of Europe got rid of their serfs in like the 16th century. It took you another 300 years to come
yeah.
to parity
Well, also,
with your
right now,
neighbors.
out of every 100,000 people in slavery on the planet today, 13 of them are in modern Russia. There are 1.8 million slaves in Russia right now. Forced labor, forced prostitution, and immigrants that have been rounded up, or foreigners that were rounded up from other countries, people who were caught in eastern Ukraine or in Chechnya or in Dagestan, or any of these people rounded up. 1.8 million slaves today. There were, what is it, 600,000 slaves brought from Africa to the United States before it was the United States, like in the early colonies that created the U.S. slave trade. In total, less than a million. Again, a proportion of the population, enormous, but there are 1.8 million slaves in Russia now, not including, by the way, the people they control and force into slavery in the areas where the Wagner Group and Russian military controls the diamond or the mineral or the gold trade. As bad as people think fucking Starbucks showing up in India is, or Coca-Cola's search for more water, what the Russians do throughout Africa isn't even remotely like they don't pull any punches about it. They're like, it's basically a point of
Yeah.
pride.
Or the
And so
DPRK. The
right,
DPRK, the North Koreans, they will send over mine workers
right.
and things like that on every year. They'll send over
And
slave labor.
anybody who calls
If you
it
if you
forced
wanna,
labor just aggravates the
yeah,
shit out of me. It's slavery, because you can't leave. You can't not work,
yeah,
and you won't live if
and
you
you
don't.
yeah.
That's slavery.
If anybody actually wants to look up a really interesting story on this topic, actually, there's a very famous story of Ukraine's poet laureate, Taras Shevchenko,
Mm-hmm.
who is revered here. And he was born into serfdom. He was born as a Ukrainian serf in Moscow's empire. And there's a very famous story when he is kind of under house arrest in St. Petersburg. He's kept within the court, but he can't return to Ukraine, and his writing is monitored so that he doesn't write in his native Ukrainian. And he meets a former slave in 1858. There's this former slave, Ira Aldridge, who has become a famous American actor. He's an African American actor, and he's in St. Petersburg performing Othello,
Mm-hmm.
and he meets Shevchenko, and they spend the day together. And it is an absolutely fascinating story about Shevchenko as a white slave in Russian imperialism and Ira Aldridge as a former slave in America's chattel slavery system. It is absolutely fascinating what they like, how they felt this deep kinship,
Hmm.
how they saw the world in the same way, as these kind of like, you have been elevated to this place because of your talent. Shevchenko was an amazing artist. He was
Hmm.
a poet, a writer, but as a Ukrainian, he couldn't write in his native Ukrainian, and he was born into serfdom, and he was only lifted out of serfdom by his artistic talent. And Ira Aldridge mirrors that story as a black man born into chattel slavery, but
Hmm.
later emancipated and becomes elevated because of his acting ability. And these two men meet in St. Petersburg. It's a fascinating story. If anybody wants to really look into the kind of way that, yes, there are similarities in terms of how one power authority is subjugating another power authority, is subjugating other human beings because of their race, their identity, their lack of privilege. I was going to say privilege, but it's really lack of privilege because you're either a serf or a slave, and
Hmm.
how they got along. It's a fascinating meaning. So yeah, if anybody wants to look into it, just Google Taras Shevchenko, Ira Aldridge. I think it's 1858, St. Petersburg. I mean, it's
Hmm.
look, the thing we forget as Americans, and this always does kind of bother me about America, especially when we talk about like American empire, right?
Yeah.
Is that we loathe these things because we are American.
Right.
That it is our identity as Americans because we are the project. We are the exception to the rule. The
Hmm.
rest of the world has slavery. The rest of the world
Right.
has a lack of the rule of law. The rest of the world does not believe in
And they're certainly not
honest
going to have a
elections
civil
and
war
democracy.
about it with the ones amongst them that want to continue it.
No.
Right.
It took us 100 years to get to the American Civil War, and
Right.
again, we all knew it at the beginning of the American project. Everybody knew that
Based on the
slavery
document, this is where
won.
we were headed. Right.
Yeah, exactly, and it is because of our Americanism that we find these. I kind of make the joke of, like, Americans hate empire,
Yeah.
especially when they're involved in it.
Right.
It is because we have this American experiment and this project that we find these things so loathsome, which is, again, all brings me back to the Lincoln quote. That's
Yeah.
the bloody point. That's the thing. That's when I was sitting in Baghdad going, are the Russians right? Is Moscow right? Look at us. We are occupying Iraq. We have troops on the ground in Baghdad fighting for American
Hmm.
interests, engaging in what sure as hell looks like imperialism.
Right.
Are they right? Are they right? And I was very, very conflicted, and I was debating within myself for many years after leaving Moscow. And I find that speed quote, and it is the
Yeah.
same. It is the thing. That's the point. Because what is it that Moscow offers as an alternative? Why do you think the Ukrainians are on front lines right now, fighting like hell to resist Moscow's alternative? Because what is Moscow's alternative? Moscow's
Hmm.
alternative is, fuck it,
Yeah.
fuck it.
Yeah.
You know,
Dog eat dog.
this whole idea that you are born with certain inalienable rights and that you have recourse to the law, or that you have a say in your future and so you can cast a ballot. The Russian alternative is fuck all that. If you
Right.
got power, you got power. The big eat the small, and that is the nature of things. And you are
Yeah.
born into this world naked and afraid, and the only rights that you will achieve are those that are that you either obtain yourself by force of will or action, or that the state bestows upon you. And I get into
Mm-hmm.
trouble with that because other people do say to me, well, ultimately the state does give you. No, no, that's not what the document says. The document says inalienable rights. The state does
Yes.
not give you those rights. The
The
state
state
recognizes those
and
rights.
protects them when necessary.
Indeed, exactly. And that is a very, very different worldview. So
Right.
you have Ukrainians right now
Right.
who are dying on a front line, carrying a weapon, fighting against people who, if they were to succeed here, would subjugate their family members, their neighbors, their what have you. And so they are willing to give the ultimate cause. They're
Mm-hmm.
willing to die for this concept. And what frustrates me consistently within this war, and those of you who watched last week's episode with Luke Basley, who came
Mm-hmm.
over here, and Luke has a channel on YouTube of
Yeah.
something like 1.5 million. So it's important, he's
Mm-hmm.
bringing eyeballs back
Yep.
to this conflict. And one of the things that we discussed in that episode was this idea of like, this is the 13 colonies. These guys are fighting for the exact same damn thing that those in the third. It's just that our imperial master was over the other side of the ocean, and working with 17th century technology. Their imperial master is right next door and
Right.
has been oppressing them for centuries. But damned if they're not going to, give everything
Mm-hmm.
to fight for the exact same thing that our founding fathers fought for, and which our American project is built upon. No, we're not chattel. I'm not. I am not. I am not grist for the mill of the state.
Yeah.
Moscow cannot simply use me as it would a cow or a chicken or a goat or a donkey. I'm a human being. I'm born with rights. And Moscow rejects that idea because Moscow's conception is the state is what matters. The czar is what's
Yeah.
matter. The collective is what matters. And obviously, had I been born in Ekaterinburg, maybe my morality and my ethics would be different. But I wasn't. I was born in America, and I say fuck
Or
you to
you would have
that.
been, or you would have been killed for it early on, because
Yeah,
we talk about
or
like
beaten
we
down, beaten
yeah,
down. You would have been beaten down.
yes,
You
and
would have
like
you would have
so
found yourself at the bottom of a bottle, or
yeah,
you would have whatever,
and that may be
lost
very
your damn
well
mind.
at root of this, the inability to be free or to matter in these societies tend to drive people down like a nail driven halfway in. You see this amongst the like Russians drinking, but you also see it in the lost generation in China. When you travel over to China, there is a post and I guess concurrent to the Cultural Revolution generation that has no direction. That they were crafted on this idea that there's going to be this communist sweep in and everybody's going to have a job and there's going to be your life is going to have meaning, and there was all this fucking posters everywhere, all that gave you this hope about how your life was going to turn out, and it didn't. It became a kleptocratic pile of shit, just like modern day Russia in that regard. While still calling itself communism or whatever, it turned into something that left you on the wayside. And there are these dudes, and all they do all day long, most of them are in their 60s now, some of them a little older, that walk around smoking cigarettes and just whiling their day away doing fucking nothing, hoping to turn in a stranger for the cash reward. So they call them evil uncles when you're traveling over there. If you're a foreigner and you're in the country, they'll start gathering around you whenever you're doing something, and they're watching you and smoking cigarettes like they like this low res TV spy from 1965. But they don't have any hope. Like they just don't have any direction because they were promised this bill of goods and they can't act beyond it. So instead of fighting back against it, instead of standing up or questioning it because they're afraid to or they couldn't or it was dangerous or whatever, they just They look like a bent nail. They look like somebody when you hammer a nail and it isn't going in, but you keep hitting it until it starts crooking, and then you're just like, fuck it. They all just walk around these fucking bent nails everywhere. It's really fucking sad. And
Yeah.
I think the Lincoln quote that I go to all the time is that I think it's something along like in giving freedom to the slave, we guarantee we assure the freedom of the free. Meaning that, if somebody is in slavery somewhere in your country, then you never really are.
Yeah.
Right? You it's just not your turn yet. And that was what was going on in Russia. That's the serfdom aspect of it. They called it serfdom. It's fucking slavery. They just could like the word surf sounds softer, and it's like something you could do with a board on the beaches of California. It's slavery. It was institutional, monarchical fucking slavery, just like everywhere else. It's like when I'm talking to people about how when people push back against Marxism or socialism or whatever on the right, everybody answers with, well, police departments and roads and all that, that's socialism. And it's not. It's democratic taxation. It's you get to have a say in how your taxes are spent. Because the czars built roads. The czars had fire departments. The czars had police officers and shit like that. They just only put out the fires the czar cared about. They only went after crimes that the czar gave a shit about. And they only built roads where the czar wanted a road. That was the difference. When you have a democracy, the people can decide that the roads should benefit everyone. We should have a post office. That's why it was in the fucking Constitution. That you should have a say, taxation with representation. That's what that is. Yep. And what a lot of these before we'll get on a more of a historical rant on that, I do want to bring up that Zelensky has said that.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
You brought up czars and roads, and I have to. Have you ever heard this the czar's thumb story?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I know we really do want to talk about what's actually happening here, but I love this story, and it's one of the stories that I love to tell, and it might be apocryphal, but the story goes that. The Tsar he wants the Trans-Siberian Railway. It's either the Trans-Siberian, some people say it's the railway between Petersburg and Moscow. It doesn't matter either way. And he's frustrated with his engineers. His engineers are saying it's going to take 6 months to build this roadway, or what are we? And we need to do geographical and geological studies, and there's hard rock that we need to go through and soft rock that would make the path better, and blah, 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 blah. So it's going to take this amount of time, Your Majesty, the Tsar. And I love this story so much. The Tsar goes, fuck you engineers, fuck you geologists, whatever, this is what I want. And he throws down a ruler between the 2 points of destination, but his thumb is hanging over the ruler. And he takes a marker and he says, straight, just do it. Point A, point B, don't care what it takes. I don't care how many people have to die to build this damn railroad. This is what we're going to do. And he marks on the ruler, but because his thumb is hanging over, he gets this little bump. And so the engineers walk out and they go, oh, fuck, we don't want to piss the Tsar off because he will fucking kill us all.
Right.
So we're going to do exactly what he says. Doesn't matter how long it's going to take. Doesn't matter how illogical the engineering is. But because he has this little bump of his thumb, they built the railway literally with a and the story goes that is the railway with the Tsar's thumb. And some people say it's apocryphal, but I love the concept of it.
His hurricane Sharpie.
Nobody wants to say no. Yeah, nobody wants to say no. Because of course, But anyhow, sorry. I love that story, and
Me too.
You brought up czars and railroads, so I love that story.
I have a very similar story in some ways. In that, I've always been hired largely for my improvisational skills as an actor. I've been brought in, and they often will tell you when you're a comedian, have fun with it, which means write for us for free. We don't like the scene that much, but we'll hire somebody funny, and he'll suggest things, and we won't have to pay him as a writer.
Punch it up.
Yeah, you'll punch it up on the because you don't want to look like a jackass and you want to be funnier than the script. So they're trusting that your own self-preservation will improve the product, and I'm fine with that. But because it got me a lot of work. But when I got Queer as Folk, because some cast members wanted to play fast and loose with the script, and the writers were being very specific, and there was a lot of politics riding on it and a lot of character building riding on it, that they were like, nope, stick to the script. And even where they would have said, hey Hal, if you want to say something funny here, you can, I'm like, Michael's not funny, so don't worry about it. It was so strict to stick to the script, and the script supervisor had such a mandate about sticking to the script, that if there was a typo, I would pronounce the typo. I would fuck up the word and reverse the consonants to say, like if it was, stepped and it just said steps or something like that, I would just say what the broken word was and let them correct me. Because I was like, first of all, maybe you wrote that. Maybe they're writing a cool thing where not everybody speaks perfectly. Some people fuck up when they're speaking extemporaneously. Michael would be one of those people. So if you guys say so, dude can't pronounce, traffic. If you write Tarfik on there, and I'm gonna call it, we're stuck in Tarfik. You know what I mean? And like, there's even I think a highlight reel from season 2. That has a bunch of those in there because I'm pronouncing the typos. Because I was like, I'm not gonna catch any shit, and it was also a way for me to be funny on set without stepping over the boundary that they had set up, so I would not offend the czar of the show.
There you go.
Right? So
Yeah.
very, very like similar in an artistic sense in that one. This is true. Now, one of the things that that has come up, and Zelensky talking about this, and I want to talk about this a little bit, is that Russia, I guess, was hoping their 50-day, 10-day, 2-week pause from Trump and all that shit would allow them this window where they could punch through, and it didn't work. Not only did Biden provide the Ukrainians with at least a year's worth of stuff as of whatever, January 19th of this year, sending, that's why shit was going out the door as fast as fucking possible and already requisitioned, already sent overseas, all that kind of stuff. They were just dumping stuff. The month of December was fucking insane that they were sending stuff to Ukraine and making secondary orders so that if Trump came in and shut them down, it wouldn't necessarily slow down what Ukraine was doing in the first 6 to 8 months, but it would fuck up Arkansas's armory that was making the shit. It would take an order out of their coffers, right? And people in Arkansas would start to bitch at Trump, which is what happened with, you can argue, with the Hegseth stuff. When Hegseth stopped the shipments, it wasn't that Democrats were like, hey, you legally can't do that. It's Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, all those fuckers were like, dude, we're building buildings based on the arms sales that were requisitioned last year that are going out the door. And if they don't go anywhere, they just sit here, and the sequester still exists. So if you don't need it, it doesn't get paid for. That was one of the things that's been around for like, I don't know, 10, 15 years now. So they were like, what, that's why Trump turned it back on, because red state politicians called him up and went, whoa, whoa, whoa. This is our entire state's fucking budget. That's what happened. So in this, it looks like Russia was hoping that Trump's dragging his heels for their benefit would help them break through in Sumy and a couple other areas. And according to Zelensky, they have abandoned the offensive in the Sumy direction due to significant losses of personnel and equipment. This is from Zelensky. According to him, Russian command planned an offensive in 4 directions at once: Sumy, Novopavlovsk, Pokrovsky, and Zaporizhia, and they've abandoned Sumy entirely. They suffered heavy losses, primary personnel, which by the way, they have more anchors in these 3 other areas. So Sumy was the biggest fresh push for new land, and that's probably why they suffered. They don't have any entrenched areas where they could fall back to as much as the other areas, I guess. Or if they did, they lost them and then tried to regain them. But today they've abandoned this direction and transferred their resources and personnel to another direction. I believe they've suffered even more losses there, which we will see, I think, over the next 2 days. That's a misquote. we will see over the next 2 days. So,
Well,
it
there's so the thing that they had been threatening, months ago, was
yeah,
this: we're going to have a summer offensive, and
right.
we're going to open up new front lines. And one of
Mm-hmm.
them was Sumy, which is actually the other side from Kursk.
Mm-hmm.
So they were pushing down into Sumy from the north, kind of the northeastern section, and then they were pushing west, on these other front lines. And Sumy has absolutely been a failure,
Mm-hmm.
100%. As Zelensky, I mean, it's widely known.
Yeah.
They made no significant advance. They tried to stay mobile. They didn't dig in. They wanted to take as much land as they possibly could. They were repulsed, and so that's what he's talking about there. In the on the Eastern Front, they are making the Russians slow, steady kind of advances. They are still kind of trying to do the Pokrovsk, which is a kind of
Mm-hmm.
center of that eastern front line.
Right.
But they're also trying to sweep around to approach what is called the fortress city wall,
Mm-hmm.
and it consists of a number of cities. Which kind of on the western side is a town called Kupiansk, and it does seem like they're making some advances into Kupiansk. But there are all these other cities that are built for, again, like, look, I've made the point before, I'll make it again. The Russians fight over cities that were built for 60,000 people, roughly,
Right.
40,000 people. They haven't even gotten to these industrialized cities that are made for 120,000 people,
Mm-hmm.
150,000 people, 200,000. And I say that not because of the population, because you could turn those places into fortresses, especially out east where they're all kind of like part of the industrialized Donbass.
Mm-hmm.
So you have foundries and factories and things like that you can turn into literal fortresses, and that's what they've done.
Right.
But even behind that, there are other cities that are built for 500,000 people. There's Kharkiv that ultimately, if you're headed in that direction, you want to go to. That's the second largest city in Ukraine, built for roughly 2 million people.
Mm-hmm.
They're already at over 1 million casualties. They fight over 60,000 towns that are built for 60,000 people. What the hell's going to happen when you get to these larger cities, these
Right.
industrialized factory cities? I, everybody kind of, it's the scrimmage line boys that like to look at maps and go, oh, they've gained a kilometer here or they've gained a kilometer there. And I'm sitting there going, there is no way that they have the capacity to get to where they need to go to make it worth it. Zelensky also came out today and said they expect maybe two more kind of offensive pushes before winter comes on. So maybe
Right.
like a couple in fall. Like today, for example, we're well out of summer in Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
It was pissing rain. It was pissing
Yeah.
rain today, and
Right.
that means the Raputitsa is coming, and the Raputitsa is the mud season, and it's going to get the earth is going to soak up all of this rain that's about to come in September and October. They might try a couple of different offensives. Obviously, warfare has changed because of the drones, but you still can't move once the Earth turns to the sludge that it's about to turn into. So I do not see them before winter comes in, and when winter comes in, that whole thing, those dynamics change as well because the ground will freeze, but also you can't move your men because they will die in the elements.
Yeah.
You cannot move into a place where you can entrench. and they have until mid November. You know,
Right.
the whole thing. It's this narrative that Moscow pushes out there of the inevitability of Russia is just
Mhm.
all
Yeah.
100% wrong.
If it
They're
was inevitable, it would have
screwed.
happened a long time ago.
Yeah,
Honestly,
yeah.
that's the
If they could
reality.
have done it, they would have already done it. If
That's
they
right.
could have done it, they already would have done it. And they can't do it. And it's just going to get worse and worse. And the Ukrainians are going to keep pounding their oil industry.
Yeah.
There you go. That's
So,
standing in line. And that's now. That's
yes,
now that people are standing in line for 8 hours to get 2 liters of gas.
that's right.
Okay. What happens? What happens when it's frickin' November and it's
Yes,
-10?
that's right.
This whole thing is an absolute disaster for the Russians. It's the worst military decision that Russia has made in I don't know how long. I mean,
Right.
I think it's worse than the Russo-Japanese War. I think
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the capitulation at the end of
Yes,
the
it
First
is.
World War was
Yeah.
pretty devastating, but I think this is worse. And it's just the whole damn thing. It's
So,
just
yeah. So for people that don't know, by the way, gas prices in Russia have surged 10%, or sorry, 30% in the
mhm.
last like 2 months. 30% in the last less than 90 days. Gas prices are up 30%. Inflation and GDP contraction has caused a rise in consumer goods costs of 10%. So 10% inflation, and the ruble isn't going as far in that situation. So they're talking about like empty shelves. We've been through this once before, but they were able to. That's when they shifted to the war economy, and the idea was that you move over to this and you can kind of remedy that for a while because you can create this internalized engine for your economy, but that only goes so far. It's not a self-sustaining thing. It's not like a perpetual motion machine where if we're just always at war, we're always making money. Like it's this idea of this military industrial complex to run your economy as opposed to patch holes in it, which has always been the myth about the United States. In the case of Russia, their internalized myth, I guess, is that they can float this because they're on a war footing. Well, that started to run out. Like it never was sustainable, anyways. It would have worked if they were like, we'll do this for a year and then 6 more months of fighting, we're done. And this was 2.5 years ago. So, this is exactly why Tucker Fucker Carlson never left Moscow while he was in Russia. That's why he never went to the outlying areas, never went to, any of the other stuff, villages and shit like that, or even some of the places, near Kursk where people were, because if you were really there to pat Putin on the fucking back and tell this story about how they're doing so great and the Ukrainians are so awful, one of the ways you could do it is go down there and interview people who were displaced when the Ukrainians took Kursk. Right? You could go. That would be one of the ways you would do it as a fucking mill blogger or some asshole, looking like the Ukrainians started this and feeding that narrative. But he didn't go anywhere fucking near it. Why? Because he'd have to drive through a bunch of places that look like shit, that look like Appalachia, and admit to himself that this is just old fashioned kleptocracy writ large. Two big cities
Mhm.
pretending that the rest of the country is that way. And so there again, gas is up 30% with the oil refinery hits and the like. Sales are down of oil. They're doing everything to undercut that. But even when they're selling it, it's really just to keep it out of the tubes, out of the pipes, so that it doesn't get all like gacked up and fuck up their entire, processing and extraction industry. Because you got to keep that shit flowing or it will gum up the works. So they're selling it at bargain basement prices. Romania, I think, one of the Hungary maybe bought some, and Lindsey Graham was bitching about it yesterday. And the reason they did it is because it's like bargain basement prices. It's almost COVID prices because they're just selling the oil just to get it the fuck out of there, so they can keep rolling. And eventually, Trump's going to give them a fucking break. And so inflation there is 10% right now. Like, think about how 2.9% inflation in the United States under Joe Biden in the last year was a pivotal, you know, a driving point of the election. 2.9%, down from 9 and then down from 3.5, right? Headed in the right direction. Literally watching it go down like it should over time, nothing drastic, just recovering from fucking COVID. And here they are, like fucking 10% now. Also, I haven't even checked in the recently, like, what the interest rate in fucking Russia is, right? Holy shit. What
Oh,
was
it's
it,
got to be.
19% the last time we looked or something stupid?
Yep.
I'm gonna look it up right now because it
And the Ukrainians have damaged 20% of their oil and gas infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 20%. That's just insane. And
Yeah.
yeah, the interest rates, I'm sure, are astronomical. But also, what's happening is that the Kremlin is forcing banks to give loans at lower interest rates than they would
Yes.
normally, the military industrial complex, which means the banks are losing money hand over fist, which
Yeah.
probably is resulting in large, also contributing to larger
Well,
interest rates
yeah.
because
So that's that kleptocratic
anybody
part of
else
it.
who's
Right.
right,
They
right,
like the friends of Putin get loans at close to margin, close to normal, but the
right.
average citizen gets one at 30, so it evens out at 17, 18, 19%. Like it's the difference between like Trump not paying anything on his fucking Deutsche Bank loans and the average citizen in the United States having a 21% credit card. But like if the entire economy was built on that, it's like it's fucked up. And Transneft is warning about rate cuts because of the
Mhm.
Ukrainian drone attacks. They're not going to cut rates. They just mean output. Like that is so fucking crazy. They're not going to slow their output preemptively. They literally mean they're losing capacity because fucking sections of the oil processing facilities are getting blown up. Holy shit. But please, Scott Ritter, tell me again how like Russia's really
Yeah,
winning and it's inevitable.
yeah. It's
Fucking
only a matter
hypocrite.
of time, and yeah.
That's right. Just like Trump can outrun the Epstein files. Meanwhile, world's largest photo of Epstein and Trump unveiled at Windsor Castle of head of the U.S. president's state visit. I want people to look at this. Like, you think a P tape would be bad? Fuck, man. At this point, like, Trump wishes somebody was playing P tapes on monitors so they wouldn't see this fucking picture of him and Epstein that you can see from fucking space.
And
And that's,
Windsor is such a funny little town.
yeah,
It's all Windsor only exists because of the royals. I mean,
yes,
that's the town would not. It's tourism, and it's the royal family, and the
yeah.
fact that they're doing this
Oh my
at
God.
scale in Windsor.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when I set up. I was the project manager for the wedding between Meghan Markle and
Mm-hmm.
Prince Harry,
Mm-hmm.
which was conducted in Windsor, and the hoops we had to jump through to actually set up like kind of risers and things like that, so we could get elevation, so we could film the procession and things like that. We had to jump through so many hoops. The fact that the city of Windsor is letting this happen is so funny to me because there must be somewhere in the halls of power in the city of Windsor, in the town of Windsor, going, okay, we'll let you do that.
Right. Also, by the way,
Which is hysterical.
Ghislaine Maxwell has claimed that she and Epstein were part of the introductions of Meghan Markle, or people tangential to them to William or to Harry or whatever, whichever. I don't
Harry. Yeah.
care. I don't give a shit about royals because I'm a fucking American. We fought a war, so I don't have to give a shit about magic families. But the reason they, this stings a little more is because of that story. Now, it may be apocryphal horseshit, by the way, by you know, I was about to say like a that she's sort of lying just to benefit herself or just to like, but you can tell that like she's just trying to buy more time, effectively like, oh, tell me more, that kind of ground. Yeah. So, anyways, the Brits arrested 4 people for doing this. For which is, I gotta say, it is so choice. Yeah. And they unfurled this giant picture, and then this is the other one, that his mugshot, Epstein's mugshot. They played video, House panel release drawing of Epstein apparently signed by Trump. Like they were playing it was like a slideshow. And next up, class, blunk, is a picture of them. This is Prince Andrew and him having a walk. Isn't that lovely? Click, blunk. Here's Virginia Giuffre, the woman that was taken in a picture with Prince Andrew, who is now fucking dead, who was in a mysterious accident/beating the week before she allegedly committed suicide. Why did she do this? Like, have we ever had a history of people committing suicide because royalty or people in power threaten their families if they don't do themselves in but quick? And when Jeffrey Epstein's fucking wingman is the president of the United States, you can see how somebody who was a victim of this kind of shit might take matters into their own hands to protect the people that are living and their own children. So fuck all these dudes, especially these guys and this dude and these guys, and this couple. Fucking hell. But so hats off to everybody.
I love the way the Brits have been prepping for his visit. I mean, it's just
they've literally kept him out of London. It reminds me
of that last time. That last time where they had the baby Trump balloon. Or when the Scots were up at his golf club up in Scotland. Everybody hates Trump. Everybody hates Trump so much. And the fact that he goes over there, because he loves to hobnob with the royals. Of course he does. He loves kind of pretending that he's got this kind of, aristocratic air about him, and they hate him.
Yes.
They absolutely hate him in England.
Yeah.
With some exceptions, but whatever.
Well, Nigel Farage.
Nigel Farage. Right. Yeah, exactly. Those guys are such a minority.
Even those motherfuckers. You can tell there's so many of those guys where like Trump surrounds himself with sycophants and suck-ups. And everybody around him in the world has figured out that that's the way through him is ego. Not to him, but through him. Like, it is abundantly clear that all those tech leaders that were at that fucking dinner went back and was like, okay, everybody put your phone in a fucking Faraday bag. We're going into the room with no cameras, where we don't have any tech or whatever. Because I got to tell you guys what a fucking loser this dipshit was. Like, they all did it. They all did it. I guarantee it. And they're like, but we got a $4 billion contract out of it, guys. And the next 30's right around the corner because JD Vance has convinced him that we have to do this. And by the way, for those of you that think I'm kidding, let me look this up real quick. I think it was Axios that had this story this morning about, there we go. Microsoft Copilot AI is now available to House members and throughout the House with extended security precautions and other stuff and limitations on it, whatever. But they have 6,000 free, wink wink, contracts available because of money doled out for the building facility and the ability to build their own power plant or whatever. That's the trade-off. It's like, it's basically they're just buying the services and just pretending they're not. So you don't have to budget for, we bought this service from Microsoft and then they're going to do this. Like, it's just fucking, never mind. Anyways, the point is, AI, like Copilot is now available to all staffers and people in the House, when last year they had outlawed it. That the House Republicans last year literally passed a law. I want to see if they have it in here. Microsoft 365 Copilot. Technical staff started testing the products in June. Where is it? Johnson Jeffrey launch. Yeah. Where is it? I know they're saying, unfortunately, it's going to be in here. Last year, yeah, there you go. Last year, the House banned congressional staffers using Microsoft Copilot. This is Johnson last year. They put this in. They passed it like you can't use it. And now, after one tech dinner, man, there it is. So, and also, I want to point this out. Meanwhile, when people are talking about slavery in the United States, which was a scourge, and we fought a war over it, and we're past it, and anybody who wants to go back can go fuck themselves. Right now, today, the abducted children that were stolen from Ukraine are being forced to work creating drones that will kill their relatives at home. And it was like forces kidnapped children to build drones. They're enslaving children they abducted from Ukraine. Stop fucking tap dancing. This is the Telegraph. Research by Yale University reveals 8 different types of facilities, including a military base, where the children have been held. Stolen Ukrainian children were put to work in factories to produce drones and other military hardware for Russia's armed forces. The study by Yale's Humanitarian Research Lab presents details of 210 facilities used by Russia in kidnapping, deportation, re-education, and forced adoption of tens of thousands of Ukrainian kids. It outlines 8 different types of facilities, including a military base where the children have been held as part of Russia's program of coerced adoption and fostering. Yale's latest findings continue to highlight the war crimes on him. He's facing an arrest warrant as Russia, blah, blah, blah. In one case, researchers found the children who had passed through the All-Russian Children's Center Change in Russia's southern Krasnodar Krai region have been made to help construct drones, mine detectors, robots, and rapid loaders for assault rifles. They are being enslaved to make the weapons that will kill their relatives. Right now, today, not in 1619, not in 1864, not in fucking pre-civil rights era America, not in the transatlantic slave trade that brought 6% of the people from that slave trade into the colonies in the United States and the rest of them to South America. Not then, not an argument about, 3/5 of a person in the fucking Constitution. Today, fucking today, there are children that have been stolen from Ukraine that are being forced to make the weapons that will kill their family members. Now.
Yeah.
Now. And that, this is the part that sets my fucking skin on fire when people talk about, like we've been talking about with the Lincoln quote about dealing with your history and having it. There's an element of perspective where accepting your history, warts and all, doesn't mean all warts all the time, which is what Russia wants of everybody else. They want them to stare at their warts so they ignore the cause, the planter wart, patient zero that is Russia right fucking now.
Yeah.
It steals the kids. It's making them make weapons that will kill their own family members, their own people now. And I can't stress that enough. And the news people that cover this shit have got to start talking about these children that have been taken and the fact that they're being enslaved. That Russia is engaging in child slavery. Remember the whole thing how fucking Schindler's List. The way he saved children was by convincing the Germans he needed their small hands to help him make munitions in a factory. And so he could help them escape out of the country. But that was his argument. The Nazis were doing that. The Nazis were like, oh, okay, if you want to use children to make arms to kill people, especially Jews, we're fine with that. They made the stovepipes for the ovens. They made children make the stovepipes for the ovens. Russia's doing that now, not on the History Channel, not in black and white, today.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and taking them to indoctrination camps, where they tell them things like,
right,
your family willfully gave you up because they don't care, because your family members, have been corrupted by the Nazi government in Kiev.
Right.
So aren't you angry about that? Don't you want to learn how to fight against the Zelensky junta.
Yeah.
And then they drill it into them. They make them march. They make them sing,
Sing songs, right?
nationalist Russian songs.
Yeah.
It is a it is it's like the Khmer Rouge camps that existed, where
Yep.
they forcibly try to and are often successful because
Hmm.
this is not a new technique. You
No.
put a human being under enough pressure and pain and suffering, and
Hmm.
then tell them, it's the old what was it? What's the John
Stockholm syndrome.
Candy?
Oh, what?
Yeah, the Stockholm said, well, there's the John Candy scene in what's the movie he did with Tom Hanks where they were
Oh, yeah.
State
The
Department workers.
no,
Yeah,
you're
and
thinking.
and
I think
John
you're thinking of
Candy is
Spies Like Us. Like you
no,
mean
no, no, no. It's John Candy has this great scene where he's True
Volunteers?
Blue America volunteers. There it
Yes.
is, and he's True Blue America, and he's like, I believe in the good old American stars and stripes, and you'll never change my mind. And then of course it's a quick cut to him in a communist. Our plan is to liberate the proletariat from the.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
just like
Right.
you can't. There is no human being, or where there's a will, there's a way. And when you want to indoctrinate, yes, people can resist. People can resist their entire lives. Some people are unbreakable, but generally, if you put enough, you push the buttons, you put enough pressure on people, you
Hmm.
can change. You can brainwash them, and as you say, the Stockholm syndrome thing. So they are teaching right now, as we
Yeah.
speak, some of these young children who are also, of course, even more susceptible because they're young and malleable, and they're selling them the lie that you were abandoned by your loved ones, your family, because of this Nazi junta and this this
Right.
this Bandera loving Zelensky, and
Hmm.
they'll put a gun in their hand, and maybe not tomorrow,
Happens all
but
the time.
if they're
Right.
still, yeah, absolutely, 5 years down the road, a
Yeah.
generation down the road,
So
Ukrainians fighting Ukrainians, absolutely. So
there's
it's a tragedy all around.
and by the way, now I want to watch Volunteers because John Candy. There's the new movie
Mm.
I Like Myself that's coming out about him. His daughter worked on Lab Rats with us, and she's just a lovely human being. So I'm glad they're finally doing this because
Aren't you
everybody around him
absolute
loved him and
genius?
yeah, just a fantastic person. And I also want to watch Spies Like
This is
Us.
my sister. You can all have her. I hear she's very good.
Every minute you don't tell us why you're here, I cut off a finger.
Mine or yours?
Yours.
Damn. So such great writing. So there was a question via the Discord.
Sure.
How Russia is handling the Kaliningrad Oblast since the war started.
Oh
Yeah.
boy, yeah. This is the Suwalki Gap. It is the Kaliningrad is an enclave on the Baltic Sea, very susceptible, very vulnerable,
Hmm.
needs to be constantly supplied by traveling through what I believe is Polish territory, either Polish or Lithuanian territory officially. But it's cut off, and it's strategically potentially very important. And also, if the Russians wanted to, they could cut off the Suwalki Gap,
Hmm.
and it would isolate the Baltics.
Hmm.
Which is, yeah, there it is. You can see it right there. I'm thinking it's Lithuanian
Hmm.
where the actual gap is. I've been on that train,
Hmm.
um, but I forget which side of the border, Lithuania or Poland, it was on.
Right.
But in order to support it, you have to have that gap
Yeah.
supplied and
This little,
clear
basically
and
the
able. Yeah,
Belarus and then the border, basically, they just run right along the line into Kaliningrad over here. Whoops, let me
yeah,
slide this up.
basically.
So scroll, get out of here, quit it. This is so exciting.
Well, and
Um,
it's also important because now after this recent
Here,
attack with the drones,
yeah,
Poland has closed its border with Poland's closed its border with Belarus,
Belarus, right?
and that was that was an important border to remain open for the Russians because it allowed them
Mm-hmm.
to infiltrate Europe, to again send goods and services to Kaliningrad, which then could get out into the Baltic Sea. And so they are screaming bloody murder
Yeah.
about the Poles having closed that border. But tough, you sent a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of drones into
Yeah.
Poland, and we haven't heard the end of the repercussions of that story.
No.
The Brits are sending troops in there. The Germans have sent air defense things in there. There's
Right.
discussion of some form of controlled airspace that would have like a 25 kilometer or whatever, 15
Yeah.
mile line of control on either side of the Polish
Mm-hmm.
Ukrainian border, create kind of like a no-fly zone. The
Yeah.
Russians have responded that if the Poles were to start shooting down Ukrainian munitions that are flying within Ukrainian airspace, that would be a declaration of war. But of course, they're going to say
You
that.
mean
I mean, all
Russian
of this
Russian
is
munitions in Ukrainian airspace? But yeah.
yeah. They
Yeah.
they want to. It has been proposed. I don't know if it's going to actually be brought into effect, but that they would set up on either side so that if there were more Russian drones that were headed into Polish airspace, that they would be able to
Mm-hmm.
knock them out 25 kilometers on the Ukrainian side of the
Right.
border. And of course, Moscow's
Can
screaming about this.
can
And,
I
but we
also?
have not seen the
Yeah.
end of the repercussions of that.
No, not at all.
That
And
that
there's buildups
incursion.
in Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia too by the Europeans to protect those areas. I would like to point out something to the dipshit but NATO expansion assholes. This is the Ukrainian border as it is in reality, without the fuckers coming in and stealing a big chunk of the country. And here's Kursk, I guess it would be about here. And there's
Mhm.
Moscow. Right? This is the size of the Ukrainian border. And the idea was we can't have a border that big, that close to our country in NATO. Right? That was the whole thing. This whole war started, and if it has to happen, we're going to declare war on the entire world. This is the fucking Finnish border with
Mhm.
Russia. Look at just like the fucking comparison of size. Like you're going to talk about like look at look how big it is. Jesus Christ. And it's got seafaring ability around the outside. If you wanted to fucking attack from this side, you could take this little area, surround it with ships. Like, as far as, like, playing a fucking game of Risk, the idea that, like, Ukraine's a non-starter. If it's going to join NATO, we're at war with the rest of the world. But Finland joins and they're like, get the fuck out of here. If you're worried about missile defense on your fucking border that will stop missiles coming from out of your country to the U.S., which is part of it, which is why the Golden Dome, Finland is much more functional as a place to put anti-ballistic missile, batteries via NATO and the United States to protect against a Russian incursion than fucking Ukraine is, because you've got all of Europe and they have them. You can put them in Poland, and the difference between the launch vector is minimal. It's a few hundred miles. It's fucking stupid. But Finland's a bulwark. It's a fucking wall. So the strategy idea that Moscow had to act because Ukraine was going to become in NATO, join NATO, and then Finland joins because of this shit is the most counterproductive, idiotic, militaristic move in modern warfare.
Yeah.
It's
it takes out one, not only that, but strategically for them, it takes out one of their four naval fleets.
Yes.
Their Baltic Sea fleet is based in St. Petersburg, basically.
Right.
And now it's a frickin' NATO lake.
Yeah.
And I don't hear Moscow saying anything about
our ships are
that.
trapped. Fuck you. Right. Yeah. Like, they were never going to get out anyways because of Denmark and all this stuff, which is why they probably want the Black Sea, because they move the ships down here and then you can get them out past Greece and down through Africa and all that. Because they know increasingly, this is fucking permafrost most of the year, but also you have to go around Finland and Sweden and Norway, and they're not real big fans of being taken over by the Russians any more than the Ukrainians are. So like this idea somehow that like, but my NATO expansion is like, dude, you caused the biggest NATO expansion on your border in history, and it's twice the size. Never mind Sweden as backup. The fucking Finnish border and the locking out of the Baltic Sea port for St. Petersburg as a military outpost is you've nullified one of your biggest strategic points because you couldn't even fucking play nice. You would have had that access had you wanted to do a surprise attack on NATO at some point in the future. You would have had that ability if you hadn't started this shit. You would have caught them off guard. You could have parked a bunch of ships. Hey, we're just going past Denmark on our way out to sea, and it's no big deal. And then boom, right? You could have done that if that's what their plan was. But because of this, because this dickhead wanted this, it's so fucking stupid. It's like, and again, 1 million dead or removed from the battlefield. We're well over this point in the show, but I want to remind everybody that Phil has a show called On the Edge. Check it out. Listen, look, just like Trump's attempt,
so stupid.
It's so stupid,
absolutely stupid, and it's just, and the people who like, oh, you better deal right now, Kiev, because if you don't deal right now, it's going to be worse when you eventually have to capitulate. Are morons and have no idea what's actually happening.
Right.
Russia cannot. Let me be as blunt as I possibly can. And you're right, we are over. But I want to make this point. Anybody who can hear my words, Russia cannot win this war. They do not have the means. Ukraine will be sovereign. It will contain a sovereign, democratically elected government with checks and balances in the capital, Kiev. It will have Odessa on the Black Sea, which means the dominion of the Black Sea will be refused to Moscow, whether or not they hold Crimea or not. Moscow can't win. It can't. It's not possible. It doesn't have the means as the war stands now. If they stop the war with some sort of advantageous position and they come back in 5 or 10 years, we'll see. Who knows? I don't think it's possible. I don't think it's possible, full stop, even if they did get that break, because their demographics are falling apart.
Right.
They're screwed with their economy, and they're going to remain screwed for a very, very long time. This is disastrous and always has been. So those those people who are out there saying Russia, Ukraine, sue for peace as quickly as you possibly can because it's only going to get worse for you. Haven't got a clue what's going on. Nope. And if you didn't watch last week's episode, watch it with Luke. Luke was just out on the front lines talking to those people who are still resolved to man those lines and defend against Russia for the very reason we began our conversation today. They know what it means to live under Moscow's dominion, and they're never going to do it again because it is the speed letter. If we're not allowed, I would rather die fighting for my liberty and my freedom on my feet than commit not only my family, not only myself, but countless generations in the future to living on my knees under the dominion of Moscow. Who don't give a shit about their citizens because they don't believe in human rights.
Absolutely.
And that's what it's all about.
Yeah, agreed. And I want to like the entirety of this fucking conversation. I've got to jump off too because I'm going to be on Bob Seska's show in about 15 minutes. I want people to recognize that like Russia has no excuse, land-wise, resource-wise, for wanting anything from anybody else. Look how big this fucking country is. Think of all like rare earths, oil, whatever the fuck you're talking about. And then think of the people that have been able to build some fucking architecture and a space program over time. They have no fucking excuse for being a burned out kleptocracy. None. It's mismanagement. It's fucked up. And the fact that here's Kazakhstan, which is mostly desert, which is wealthier than Russia right now. Think of what most people think of Kazakhstan as far as being a joke country. And then China is already renaming this part of Russia by its Chinese name because they're just like waiting for the other shoe to drop. Also, look at how big India is right here. Like this is all like the landmass aspect is so fucked up versus Kazakhstan or the desert of China, which is larger than almost all of India. Like it is insane how, and look at the greenery in this area, Finland, Sweden, all this stuff. Look what Russia has to benefit from, like this area. The idea that you would need to steal the breadbasket of the world, like from Ukraine, because you mismanaged all this shit, is insane. The United States is special because of the Mississippi River. We are lucky as fuck that our country is divided right down the middle by a lane where we could ship goods that come from the northern part out to sea very easily. It's our own Panama fucking canal. And that's why the country is so, fruitful over time. We got a big chunk of desert, just like a bunch of other more.
Union forever,
that's
Union.
Right. That's right.
Yep.
but
I just watched Lincoln recently.
Yeah. So the purpose of this, if you we have been managing to hold this shit together for quite some time, and Russia's
we're
so
not
busy.
going to a civil war.
No, we're not.
There's no fucking way.
And no matter how hard they try, and Russia is spending so much time trying to fuck up our democracy. Because they can't even manage they have the size of the eastern part of the United States, this part over here, which has a shit ton of greenery and farmland and all kinds of stuff. Even our deserts aren't as bad as the Sudan. They don't get as hot, and so they're useful. And there's these big swaths of them that are useful, and they actually have a environmental benefit. So they can act as heat sinks and all kinds of crazy shit, making water flow through there because they melt and whatever cycle. Russia has 5 times around Moscow in the area, the land of the East Coast, like Kentucky, Virginia, all these areas. And what are they doing with it? What? Drilling oil and fucking off. It's so weak. It is so amazingly pathetic. The Russian people in the modern era, through whether it's communism burning them down or the Tsarist system or this imperialistic thing that you talk about often, are have fucked up a free lunch. And we just got to make sure we don't do the same thing and follow them down it, because that's what they want. Everybody wants to drag them the fuck down, right? That's what they want. Anyways, appreciate you, Brett, for sticking around,
buddy.
brother.
Yeah,
I'll see you again.
for me. If he ever wants to talk Ukraine, let him know I'm available.
Absolutely.
I'll talk to you on Saturday.
Appreciate it, brother. All right, I'll let you go. All right,
Take care.
There he goes.